Hello and welcome to Formula One Fans of America. This is episode 7. I am Rich, your host, and with me I have Jay, Greg, and Fabian. One of the best races of the season so far for me was Baku in Azerbaijan. Somebody's got a big dog that sounds like a horse. Giant animal. So let's get into it, though. We'll kick it off with our "we were right, we were wrong" predictions. Unfortunately, Checo screwed mine up. I had like a Red Bull coming on. Actually, no, I had both McLarens on the podium, and Lando screwed me with his qualifying. Almost made the podium though. Pretty decent coming out of. I think he started 15th on the grid, and he went out in Q1, which was wild. First
bizarre.
time that's happened in a while. Yeah, very bizarre. Had some issues and just couldn't get it. So yeah, that screwed me on my predictions, but I was right with George Russell being on the podium. Albeit like not the circumstances I imagined. I thought he would have had a better drive. Both Mercedes were struggling pretty mightily. Both Red Bulls, or at least Max was struggling with the Red Bull far more than Checo was, up until that, second to last lap, which we'll get into. But overwhelmingly, we were pretty accurate with our predictions. We all said Ferrari was going to do well and have a good weekend, and we all agreed on that. But yeah, don't have much else for we were right, we were wrong, I think. Although I was right about Oscar pushing up and potentially pushing for the Drivers' Championship. We'll talk a little bit about that because the way the point situation is shaking up, it's getting interesting. It's getting very interesting now, especially for the second, third, fourth. Like it's very close competition. So, again, like this was one of the most exciting races of the year for me. I love this track. I love how challenging it is. It's sort of Monza-esque, but there's opportunities to pass here, so you don't get the sort of boring train and everybody staying in line. Like we did. Not Monza, Monaco. We don't get that effect on a street circuit where it's there's no change of position. It's all about the qualifying. What did you guys think about Monaco? Good Lord. What did you guys think about Baku? Azerbaijan. Who wants to go first? Greg. You go first.
He didn't even point.
Dick.
Oh, well, it's true. No, it's Jay. Jay, you're going.
Fuck. All in all, good race. Better qualifying, to be honest. I have watched this crash at least 17 times now. And realistically, I can see why they said a racing incident on it. Because if you look from the top, all Checo. If you look from the fucking side, all signs. So it's like, which angle is actually showing the accurate representation of this crash? Regardless, we were talking about this the other day, I think even before the crash. Checo has scored 39 points in the past 11 races now. 39 points. He's now caused, early estimation on this, $4.4 million worth of damage against the cost cap. It's time to get the fuck out of the seat. Like, legitimately, everything is going wrong for this dude. I get where Liberty Media is at, everything like that. Fuck that. Back to the passes, though. Oscar, once again, fucking coming around and just not giving a fuck. Like, this dude, I'm pretty sure, would be willing to take a couple of crashes at this point with the passes that he is making. Lando's hard charge. No. Lando got lucky on a good call strat from McLaren, which is unusual for McLaren this year. And the magical DRS fairy that is now the McLaren car. What the FIA is going to say about this, like, they can't ignore this one. They cannot say, will it medal or test? Because if that meets your test, there's something seriously fucking wrong with your car or testing. Between the 4-inch bend in the front wing and then a freaking inch and a half to 2 inch gap in the back wing, something is highly wrong, and it needs to really be like brought in at this point. Because in all honesty, I think Leclerc should be given the win for yesterday. If they do decide to do anything about this wing, both McLarens should be disqualified from that race, just simply due to the fact that they broke the rules. That's a very clearly stated rule of 7 millimeters of a gap in that wing. If you can see 7 millimeters from the distance that we are seeing it, your eyes are a hell of a lot better than most people's. And you should probably be like an engineer of some sort. But the Williams cars being up there, incredible. Like, granted, Carlo Pinto got a gifted point or gifted 2 points. I apologize. I think it was. But he got gifted some points yesterday with either the smooth operator not being smooth or Checo the crash demon coming back out. So, all in all, pretty good race. So, I'm going to say Greg next, since he fucking did it to me, asshole.
Well, I had to point at somebody else. Baby was already pointing at me, so I don't know what you want. Well, I'm impressed that once again we got a good race out of this track, because I'd heard in years past the drivers didn't like it. They thought the real tight section was stupid, despite the fact that the visuals through camera are amazing. I think it's awesome when they watch the cars go out through the brick buildings and whatnot, or stone buildings. So that was cool. I hate to see Checo in another wreck, regardless of whether it was Sainz's fault. I think with a street circuit that wide, in that where they were, like, he didn't have to be right there. He could have moved over a little bit. But again, if it was a racing incident and they came together, okay, it is what it is. I felt really bad for Sainz, and he says, "Oh, what happened there?" He was so bewildered. He's like, "Oh, this is the strangest thing." And Checo was the exact opposite. Checo was furious. So I'm impressed we got great racing. I'm impressed with the McLarens. They obviously have some sort of exploit here, whether it's front wing, back wing, or they're just doing something extra special with the floor that we haven't seen yet, because they don't wreck, which is another good aspect to them. So it'll be interesting to see the rest of the battle throughout the season. So yeah, I was happy for another great race. That's basically the bottom line here. And I'm gonna say out loud, I think Vegas is gonna be the same. We saw a really great race there last year. So here we got 1, 2, 3, 4 more races to go before Vegas, and I'm expecting similar results. And that's my super early prediction. Similar results at Vegas, hopefully without Checo wrecking into anybody again. So that's it.
Or Ferrari getting destroyed by the course. I will be going. Actually, booked rooms this morning, so it's 1,000% to go. I am very much looking forward to hitting up Vegas this year. Fabian, what do you have for just general thoughts for this weekend in Baku?
Yeah. So Baku was a delight. It really was. I told you guys I watched it with my son when he's not on ship, and we actually happen to be in 2 different cities at the same time. So we actually woke up and FaceTimed each other from our respective locations and watched this race together. And it was a fun one to watch, whether we were sitting side by side or even that way, because, we're both leaned into it. Everything was really compelling and exciting. I mean, I watched everything, free practice, qualifying. It was all good stuff. I was really stunned to see Albon have a cooler stuck in his intake. I couldn't believe that. Not only is it like chartreuse, yellow, green, neon in your face, it's at the highest, most point of the car. And the only thing that I can attribute to why it was missed by everyone is because the one person who missed it, whose responsibility it probably was, the other people were just focused on their job that intently. That's the only excuse for that. They had to be so focused on going through their steps and their motions that they weren't even concerned about looking at that, But really, that was kind of, I've never seen that before, And then thinking about the fact that he's strapped in the seat, got the Hans, he's trying to figure out how to pull this thing out without ripping his deltoids apart, and get it off the car. He was looking for, the stewards to come help him, and that wasn't happening. And of course, you heard the announcer saying, just throw it off to the side, get rid of it, get out there. I think there were 59 seconds left in qualifying when he finally got that thing out of his hand. That blew my mind. I mean, that was a very unique and different thing to see happen. You know.
Yeah, that was the absolute first for me. And
Yeah.
a huge gross oversight. Greg, go ahead, jump in.
There was another instance of that back when Jensen Button was with McLaren, I want to say. They left one of the inserts in the side pod, but that was deep in the side pod. Now, granted, it was bright red, that McLaren red that they had in silver livery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's different. Like the top of the car is this big yellow thing on it. It's like hanging off one side, full of ice. Like nobody in the pit was like, yeah, no, that looks normal. Let's let him go. See you later.
That
Good luck.
Blew me away. It really did. The Lando qualifying position totally I was not expecting that. Like that was nothing I would have ever had on my radar for this weekend. Honestly, I really felt like it was going to be two McLarens on the front in the front three. That was I would have bet money.
Have y'all seen reporting on why that happened? Does anybody leak anything like, oh, we goofed up here, or there was a miscommunication? Like, why did that happen?
Jay?
Yeah. The yellow flag that came out right before Lando thought it was the section
that's right.
or the sector before, and it ended up being the sector going even further. So he was in first sector whenever it waved. He thought it was in second sector, and it was in the third. So
we had the
that's
first
why.
Safety car in several races this weekend.
So F1 should seriously consider having an electronic board system that like shows the flag with the number in it for the sector, right? So that they know.
Do, I think.
Like
I think it flashes. I think it flashes on their screen on the wheel.
The sector?
Yeah, it says 1, 2, or 3 on it. I think
at least the yellow does, but it worked. That works great on tight tracks. You get a big track like ours. You didn't need to throw it in the first place. We do this in amateur racing too. Like if there's nothing's happening in the first part of the course, don't bother slowing those people down. It's just going to cause more time,
especially in qualifying of all things. You know, and then didn't he also was that the same moment when he went across the curb and had a lot of flow on the curb also, or was that prior to that? It was in Q2. It might have been in Q2. I think that was
not tracking. Yeah,
two things, but there was a lot going on there. But that was just unreal. So setting up the whole thing, you know, in my head, I'm like, there's going to be two McLarens on the front three, and I definitely did not expect to see the Williamses even playing around or dancing in the space. So that was another thing that really caught me off guard.
Man, there was a moment in that race where Albon was, I think, in third and had potential to be in the lead.
Yes.
Which is wild.
Yes.
This was a Williams weekend. To wrap up, though, like we were right, we were wrong. We were wrong with our podium predictions because of Norris's qualifying and still got up into fourth from 15th, which is crazy. So, Jay, I'll disagree with you on like that wasn't a legendary run. That was a hell of a run to go from 15th to fourth. With the crash and all that, yeah, I get it. I still don't want to take it away from him. 15th to fourth, man, like that's significant.
It was. It was hugely significant.
Take away that wing. I want to see what happens to him without that fucking wing.
You. Yeah.
That's why
if they're cheating, they're cheating.
I'm kind of, yeah. That's why I'm against
it.
You.
Like, I get you. Okay.
Hold on.
That'd be like cheating Hamilton going from 20th to first with party mode on the whole race. Oh, wait, that happened. I forgot.
The cheating is a hard word, right? Formula One.
Bending the spirit of the rules.
Yeah. Bending it all.
Bending is the operative word.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't break.
In this case, it is
touch
bending.
The tips all you want. Yeah.
I got one last thing to say. It's a good thing Williams doesn't still do refueling during the race after that incident. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
So
fair enough. But we were right. Was McLaren took the lead for the constructors? We said that early days. Not sure if it was on this show or the previous one, but we called this very early days through the season that McLaren's going to beat Red Bull, and they did it this weekend. So we will take our we were right.
Now let's make some predictions here, if you don't mind. Can
Absolutely.
anybody beat Max? So Max is 60. I don't know, 60 some odd points out. He would have to finish third or worse for the rest of the season, and Norris would have to win for them to be. I think Max might take it. Like the car's not looking great, but he's not awful.
So here's the thing that
Piastri's
everybody
another
seems-
30 points back. Like the McLaren drivers would have to win and win and win, and Leclerc would also have to win a bunch in order for this to work.
Yeah.
All of it.
Piastri's almost 100 points behind. So that's a foregone conclusion. Lando is at 254. Verstappen's at 313. So you're looking at 60 points. That's definitely doable. Leclerc is at 235. So now we're looking at, 80 or so odd points. Seems less likely, less doable. So that's sort of the controversy with the papaya rules, though, right? Is that, are we dicking over Lando and taking him out of the championship? Yeah, I mean, it is, but they don't want to show preferential treatment to the drivers because they're both, the goal is to get both drivers on the podium and to get the Constructors' Championship points. And that's where this team versus individual concept comes into play. And you have team rules. We did have team rules come out where it was like, hey, can you slow Sainz down a little bit and keep him up there in second because he's going to keep chasing Leclerc. Like, let's give him a buffer. And he gave him, I think, about 3 seconds worth of time, slowing him down. And then they got into that dogfight with Checo. It seemed that he embraced that the best, that he's taken team orders all season long. It was smart and good strategy by McLaren. And it was finally they did the right thing with these team orders. It would have happened if the roles were reversed as well. I think, like if Lando was there, all right, Jay, like come in. But like I think that they're letting whoever's in the lead and whoever's pushing and has the best chance of scoring the most points as a driver, like let him go. Let the fastest guy who's been proving himself in the race go. And that's where these papaya rules come into play. And it's like, let's let the fastest man win. That's based, like it's race dependent and situation dependent during the race. And that's subject to change. So it's whoever could score the most points is going to get to. But go ahead and rebut, Jay.
I disagree that they would have let Oscar be the number one driver. I really do think it is written into Lando's contract somewhere that he is, anytime there's a 50-50 battle, he is taken ahead or something along those lines, because obviously Hungary was kind of an outlier, I think, where they let him back past. But I would almost put money on it as something like Max, where he's like, if you do this again, I will walk. I will not let him around me, simply put. And I think that's going to be evident at some point, because everybody views Lando as this goofy ass little kid, everything like that, which he is. He is goofy. He is everything about that. But this is
I think he's a petulant brat, personally.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
But this is
I
also
wouldn't say everybody.
first.
I think a lot of people think he's a petulant child.
After this season started, yes, I am not disagreeing. I'm saying prior to this season, or hell, prior to Hungary, everybody loved Lando. Like Lando was that goofy kid, everything like that. He has never had a teammate that was able to truly challenge him, though. This is the first teammate he has had that can actually put up a challenge. Don't even, Greg. Ricardo and Sainz do not count.
Sainz doesn't count? The guy that's been beating Leclerc?
No.
Yeah.
While he was with McLaren, I'm talking about. I'm not saying while he was at Ferrari. While he was at McLaren, he was at least a decent amount behind Lando, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Point taken. I wonder what that says of Carlos. Does that mean Carlos got better? Does that mean he didn't jive with that carb? And I will admit, watching Lando outscore both Sainz and Ricardo showed that he was dealing with whatever McLaren was giving them for cars, which I was impressed with. Now, Oscar, actually, all these new kids in the last 2 years, holy moly. I rest my case. Holy moly.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that one. Carlo Pinto needs a seat at this point, and I'm going to stand on that hill and die on it, because that dude has been driving his fucking ass off these past 2 races.
Well,
Let's see what he does with Singapore. Yeah. There ain't a seat available right now other than the Audi. And all things rumor mill saying there's going to be a
yeah.
certain German coming back into the fray.
Oh yeah, buddy.
I don't buy that
If
one.
that happened, no, he's not even denying it anymore.
Yeah, I don't buy that one.
We'll save that for Jay's conspiracy corner. Okay, because I like it. Because I do like it. Can we just talk about how composed Oscar Piastri is, just as an individual?
Dude.
Like we've spoken about the delivery over the radio, about like when it is okay and not okay to lose your composure, trying to give guys grace where it's due, right? Like these guys are flying around at 200 miles an hour. The last thing in the world you want to be doing when you're trying to focus intently is talk to somebody on the radio. But my guy coming over the comms and saying like, this was a very stressful weekend, or like, this is the most stressful weekend of my life. Just the tone of his voice, the delivery, everything is so profoundly like stoic and calm and cool. Like, I don't know what he's going to do after F1 or what he wanted to do besides F1, but he could have been like an SAS sniper for the Aussie Special Forces. Like, he's just got ice in his fucking veins. Like, if this is used like the most stressed ever, and this is your delivery and your tone and inflection and your pitch, like, all right, man. Holy fuck. I know some pretty calm, cool, collected motherfuckers, and this guy takes the cake. Like,
now you know why I've been calling him the Michael Corleone of Formula One since May. I have been. I peeped that about this dude a while back, and I'm like, this guy is a dangerous dude. Like, for real. He's got it. Like, he's got the skill, and he's got the mindset and the thought process. He's also got the infrastructure around him. Between his mother and the guy that's managing him, dude, he's getting some damn good advice, right? But it's that steely-eyed, wry, just
elaborate on that point though a little bit, because I'm not as familiar with
the guy
manager and
the guy,
his mom.
Mark Webber, the ultimate number 2 driver.
Well, I know who Mark Webber is. Obviously, I didn't know that was who was managing him. I honestly, like, I'm naive and ignorant to the background. I don't know what's going on in the background for him.
Yeah. So I mean, so Webber, like Greg alluded to, the ultimate number 2 guy, burned so many ways till Sunday by teammates, people not following rules, orders, the whole 9 yards.
That elusive German who's supposedly coming back,
right? Definitely. Feels and knows, history tells you that his career was suffocated by this type of stuff. And, it was pretty clear that people around the paddock knew that he was telling Oscar, man, screw that dude. Just, show him what you got, because if you adopt the mentality and the mantra and the signage of a number 2 guy, like I was forced to do, you're going to always be the number 2 guy. And there'll never be a chance for you, or you might miss the window of opportunity to show that you really are top flight material. And that's where that whole thing at Monza came from, right? That's where that came from. And
so this is why I asked, because I was ignorant to the fact
question.
that he had Mark Webber as an advisor, and what you're saying makes absolute sense. But if I don't know it, then I'm guessing other people don't know it as well. So that's
that's a great facilitating question. You're doing a fantastic job. And then of course the dude's just got it, man. I could tell, I could tell. And every race he's shown it and released a little bit more of it. But between Monza and this race, you see it crystal clear. Like, in my estimation, there's one number 1 driver at McLaren, and his name is Oscar Piastri, in my personal opinion, straight up. And I would die on that hill, like, right off the bat. I really would. I really think that this guy, I said that he would be the first McLaren driver to win a World Drivers' Championship back when I did the show with you guys in early June. It's looking like Max might win this championship, right? And then next year, I can promise you, all gloves are off and Oscar's going full tilt boogie.
And that's my rebut to Jay. If Lando has this in his contract, like good. I'd love to see him exercise it. Where the fuck are you gonna go? Are you unless you're gonna trade places with Max at Red Bull or somehow magic your way over into Aston Martin, you don't have a chance of winning a driver's championship with another team. You don't. Unless these 2026 regs shake out like into an insane fashion and like Williams suddenly becomes the top team, you know? I don't know how he could leave McLaren and have a better competing chance. I think this is going to come down to like, hey man, you're just going to deal with it. Whoever's fastest is fastest, and that's what we're going with. It all benefits us. It all benefits us as fans because this is the kind of controversy that's a good controversy. We have two of the greatest drivers in great cars, and now it's like their main competition is within their own team. And how do we balance and manage the like constructor and drivers championships? That's the ideal goal for every team, right? You want like an older type of Mercedes controversy, although the drivers don't, but us as like fans and followers of the sport want to see like, I want to see it like within that inter-team controversy. That's what I like. I don't like it when like one guy is just completely getting shafted and has to just assume that subordinate role. I understand why it needs to happen, but it's always leaving somebody like bitter with hurt feelings. And it seems to lead to more like crashes and desperate maneuvers and like people overdriving the car trying to prove. So like ultimately, I think that like becomes a detriment to things. Let's get into Williams though. Like we touched on a little bit, but let's dig deeper into how did Williams like both drivers in Q3 awesome, like hell yeah, was very unexpected for this weekend. But also both drivers scoring into the points. Cole Pinto drove the wheels off the car like for himself, had a little bit of a snafu early. But recovered very quickly. And so I'm not calling it as a we were wrong for myself yet. But like the younger drivers definitely, and their performance this weekend definitely make me question my thoughts and opinions. I'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about the upcoming race in Singapore, because this is where youth and athleticism truly comes into play on like the physical test that it's going to take. But what do you guys have for like Williams? Like Greg, do you want to talk a little bit about the tech and what's going on with the car with Williams and like the upgrades that they've done, or was that Fabian that wanted to hit that first?
I mean, Greg is the tech guy, but I mean, I can jump in there.
I mean, I could talk real quick to the money they've been spending. So they're so far behind the curve that they're asking for an allowance on capital improvements. So outside the cost cap, they're like, hey, we really need to spend way more money in order to get back in this competition. Otherwise, regardless of the budget constraints, they're still on the top teams. They're still never going to get off the bottom, right? These are people that were using Excel at the beginning of the year. So that's no way to manage your inventory flow. So on that notion, what's the name of that funding? What's the name of that hedge fund that they're funded by? They're pouring money into this because they know this is a guaranteed thing. Like, there are rich people that own a used car lot because they know they're going to make 30% on every car. Like, easy money right there. Anybody who can get in and own a Formula One team, easy money, because the fan base is there, the prize winnings are there. Like, this is an easy way to make money as long as you can be semi-competitive. Now, I say that Haas, like Stake F1, they're probably in the worst shape, but they've got one of the biggest manufacturers now backing them. So expect them to have a similar trajectory within a year or two. But yeah, Williams has just been beating their head against the rock, and they're finally starting to show. They went from having a car last year that was very quick in a straight line because it didn't make any downforce to this year being mostly mid-pack. I think what they did was they knew Monza and this track were coming up, and they said, we're going to build some low drag spec wings, and it's just going to be part of their development costs, and it's going to pay dividends at these certain tracks. They already had those strategies in place from being the fastest in a straight line car last year. So is it weird that they scored points? Yeah. They probably had the groundwork laid from past strategies that just never forgot those lessons. And they were like, oh, we know how to go fast without any downforce. Watch this, guys. and they got a rookie and Albon into the points. So yeah, it took a little bit of help from some other people crashing. But Fabian, what's the latest tech?
So great points. So going back to August 25th, right? We had Zandvoort, and that's when they introduced their big aerodynamic package upgrade. And their focus at the time was simply downforce. Like that was their focus. And weight reduction, right? Which is pretty significant. Come to find out, it seems like they've reduced the car's weight by 10 kilograms. I don't know how to translate 10 kilograms into time yet. I'm not that smart, but there's something there. Then their goal after that was to focus on balance. Well, apparently they've achieved all their objectives, because with what they did in Zandvoort, and then they did some interesting things. Like they went to an overbite instead of an underbite on side pods and things of that nature. They're adopting some technology from the RB20, some technological designs from the RB20. And I just said, somebody pop into my head and tell me that 10 kilograms can equate to 0.3 of a second per lap. That's pretty significant. Okay. So you take off weight, you increase your downforce, which gives you more stability. Then you don't throw off the balance of the car doing it. And then you increase the balance of the vehicle in the aftermath of that. And that's why you see WW sitting up in free practice in Q3 in qualifying in a place. It was so shocking to see it that I pointed it out to my wife. I said, babe, you see those two W's up there? Have you ever seen those before? And she's like, no. I'm like, yeah, this is new and different, So look, Vowles, I don't know what secret sauce he's cooking over there, or Greg mentioned earlier about people leaving other teams and taking knowledge, thought
So
knowledge.
we talked about that earlier on, the hiring scramble that Williams was doing, because they're serious. They are like, serious. I remember saying it, like they're investing significant money. They're snatching up all the talent that they can. People tend to get too wrapped up into the driver signings as far as like the tie to the performance, and completely ignore like the other, how many hundreds of people are on this staff that go into this team. And this ultimately in the end is a team sport. And so there's decades worth of experience, knowledge that they come into play that are obviously behind the scenes and in the background. We know who Adrian Newey is, but like, we don't know the designer for every single team, let alone all the engineers that are making these upgrades. But this silent force is a big contributing factor into car performance. And it is the last thing a driver will do is blame himself, right? Because they all think that they're perfect. They all think that on any given Sunday that they can go out and win the race. And they have to maintain that. We start to look at like teams like Sauber right now. And it's like we write them off, right? Because like it doesn't matter how well the driver performs, that car is just not going to be there. So we need to consider the parts of the whole of like, okay, these significant upgrades that Williams has done with talent and their engineering and design, this is what's going to lead to these major significant leaps and bounds and upgrades where it's like, oh, holy shit, now these guys are scoring points.
Yeah. And what's crazy about that is you look at Mercedes, they've had this vacillating, risk and reward with their upgrades. Ferrari's exhibited a similar tendency at certain points through the season.
And Red Bull failing to upgrade the car basically throughout
Red Bull.
Season. Everything has been counterproductive.
100%. Got to give credit to Williams for timing and implementation, because they really apparently nailed this aerodynamic overhaul and the impact of it to the existing chassis and structure, and then this subsequent balance thing. Because I was reading, it said that their overbite move improved the balance on the car because it shifted the center of the aerodynamic pressure toward the front axle. That was evident. I mean, Baku of all places will definitely tell you what your front axle is about. I mean, you think about all the different phases of that track, the wide areas, the elevating areas, the narrow areas. where you're coming, the wind play in Baku, and how when you're in the castle area, you're getting saved by the wind, right? That's shearing it off. Then you come back into it. All these different crazy elements of Baku. They talk about Barcelona being a great track to determine what your car is going to do in a season. I think Baku needs to be in that conversation too.
So let's talk about that specific point, because Jay and I were discussing this as we examined the crash. I know both Sainz and Checo were chasing the slipstream, and they came around that corner, and there was touch and go back and forth. Checo was doing everything he could. He was doing everything right. He was gradually moving over into the slipstream. I wonder if something pushed Sainz a little bit further than he intended to go, because his immediate reaction was, what happened? He hit Checo's front tire. Checo was moving over too. And I think that you have to watch this over and over and over again. But that immediate reaction of what happened, I obviously whatever I saw in my mind happening. And again, we're going down one of the longest, a very long straight, and not where you typically want to see contact between drivers, but airflow matters when you're topped out and just pedal to metal, literally going down and accelerating as fast as you can. The slightest push of a break in between buildings could have impacted this. And Jay, I'm curious of your thoughts on this. Was it even a break in the buildings? Did we figure something out? I try to look back at the course map too and see I would have to do some more in-depth analysis, but it's very likely that something happened with the wind and the shift in the airflow with him trying to get into the slipstream, and it just pushed him a little bit harder than he wanted to go. And both of them were caught off guard by what happened. And that's why it's considered a racing incident versus hey, I just drove into you.
So from everything that I'm seeing, like I said earlier, depending on the angle is who's to blame. I will also say that the way that it looks like Leclerc came across in front of them. Now, I'm not saying anything that's to do with Leclerc, anything like that, but we saw it earlier with Fernando and Russell, where the wind coming off of Fernando's car screwed Russell and hit him and flipped him. So it's could it be that? Because it looked like I said, it looks like Leclerc came across, and I'm wondering if that didn't have enough toe to pull Sainz just enough that it set something off. Also, like we were talking earlier, there could have been a break in between the buildings. I'm just not completely 100% sure where the wind could have come from. That really, it looks like, because if you look at both drivers had their wheels straight. They were not moving them, other than the random little adjustments, not moving at all.
Correct. Yeah, I watched both cockpit videos, and neither did any kind of deliberate move. And I think that's sort of what the stewards look at as well, was okay, did we see him check his mirrors and then move over to try to defend? And that's what caused the collision, any kind of deliberate race movement. But there was no evidence of that. So I think when we're watching this and you're shooting down the straightaway, it is all about the airflow and just judgment of the airflow is what led to this contact. Both of them were caught off guard with what happened. But carry on. Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good. So I think it was just a mixture of things there. I really do, because with both drivers keeping the wheels straight, but both drifting, and the way that Sainz drifted significantly more makes me think it was either the kick from Leclerc's car or the side street, one of them coming down. And I think that's really what set it off into motion. Because we all know,
Jay,
I will blame Checo quick, fast, and in a fucking hurry. But yeah,
Jay, do you have a feel for where the wind was? Left to right, up and down on that track with regards to where they wrecked?
So from everything I've heard, it is just a wind bowl. Literally, it can come from anywhere at any time. And looking at any city in the world, you can see exactly why it would be like that. Because looking at the back end, if the wind was coming down that side, it could have hit the building and came straight down. You know, it could have been a front wind if there's anything coming off the sides. Hell, it could have been coming from above. We just don't know because obviously none of us were there. But
so especially in that Gulf region, like of the world, like the air is very, very dense, humid, moist air, like above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, sometimes well above. Even like, I didn't check the temperature and what it was, but I've been in that region. It's a different kind of air. Like you have to factor it in almost the way that you would like racing in Colorado, just because it's the moisture content and how dense it is there is crazy. And so like that has to play significantly into just how quick and swift you're going to move and get jutted around. Like one of the first races of the year is in Bahrain, and it's similar things, right? You're like right on the Gulf, and you're getting that like such huge moist humid air. But yeah, carry on.
that's
Carried
all
us-
I
you carried us to the
had on
finish
that
line.
one. Yeah,
Good job,
I mean,
Jay.
that's pretty much all I could have on that one. There's no way of telling where wind goes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the flex in this McLaren wing, right? It's
No flex. It's imaginary.
No flex.
Nope.
No flex.
No flex.
Yeah.
No flex. Nothing to
flex
see here.
Zone. No flex.
So we were
zone.
talking about this last
No.
week.
Yeah.
So I
How-
have a visual. I can put it up and then let
Yeah.
Greg talk over that. How's that? Let's do that.
You just want to get rid of my face. You
I'm
don't
not
like
trying
my
to get rid of
face.
you, homie.
Your
But
face will
real-
still be there.
Let me do this real quick.
Yeah.
face.
We just have graphics. We're in the 21st century now.
And I'm gonna let it
Ooh-wee.
run over and over again.
Move up in our world.
Let me know when you
Yeah.
can see it.
Yep. Good to go.
I can see
Okay, I'm
it.
just gonna let it run. So
I'm going to let this loop. So last week we talked about how the FIA does
Look
these
at these
wings.
cheating
tests.
fucks.
And what you're going to see here is Jay lose his mind because it's not a Red Bull that's exploiting the rules here. So the slot gap opens up because the wing bows beneath it and spreads out. And all of a sudden now there's more than a 7-millimeter gap. And Mercedes got in trouble for this. I think that was why Hamilton had to start from the back of Brazil a couple years back. But anyway, point is, this is a new exploit where it does this at speed. It reduces drag, kind of like DRS is supposed to. This is what you would call involuntary downforce produced DRS. But when they do the wing test, where they're just pulling straight back on the wing like they think the drag would apply to it, it doesn't do this. And it's another example of how they were making the front wings bend and bow only when the load was applied by aerodynamics as opposed to point loads where the FIA just pulls down on things or pulls back on the rear wing. So props to them. How they're going to enforce this will be interesting because there's maybe they could put a sensor there to show that it's more than 7 millimeters, but this is getting into territory that FIA doesn't typically use, but they do love data because data is exact. You put a sensor on something, it's more than 7 millimeters, you're in trouble, right? That's my one recommendation that that they might want to go to because using the cameras doesn't do any good. There's different aerodynamic loads on there. If there was a 100-mile-an-hour headwind and the car's going 200 miles an hour, now there's 300 miles of air on it. That's not the team's fault there was a headwind. They can't design around that.
right.
However, if in many of these different tracks they're seeing more of a spread, then maybe they could use a sensor measurement. It would have to be probably like a LiDAR, like a small LiDAR sensor underneath the flap. But yeah, I don't know. This is a good one. This is probably a fantastic example of where McLaren has decided or gone down this development road and said, yeah, we're gonna make these rear wings, open up, and they did. Props to them. I don't see it as a cheat, but everybody else either has to follow suit or FIA has to change the rule because this is insurmountable, right? So be interesting to see what Williams had done and if it's similar.
So
I agree
my
with you.
question here. Oh, sorry, Rich.
All good. I agree with you in that it's not necessarily a cheat, right? It's an exploitation of the rules and the way that they're currently applied, which is why I don't think they'll deserve to lose any kind of points or penalties for this. It's not a clear and direct violation of the rules. This is something that's happened that it's an exploitation of the way FIA tests versus it's an exploitation of like the way the rule is written. But go ahead, Jay.
What I was going to say is by the rule of DRS, that flap cannot open. It is not supposed to move at all, because the way it's supposed to work is that it's driver activated. If it moves without it being driver activated, it is against the rules. And that is the way the rule is, black and white on the paper. If
That
it
makes sense,
opens,
and that's
You can't make
actually fair.
anything perfectly immobile.
right, but that's why they also put
It's
in
true.
that 7mm rule. However, whenever you
But
can
that's
literally
static.
see through the wing, whenever you can see through the wing and see right behind it, that is more than 7mm.
But this,
Right,
do you
but then
disagree
the
that this
challenge is you
debate
can't
is
measure it
why?
at speed.
Hold on.
Exactly. So do you think that like this debate is why they're not going to get that penalty that you want, right, Jay? Like,
Right.
they're not going to
I'm not-
validate.
they're not
They're
gonna
not
get
going to validate races. This isn't the cars too wide by, whatever a hair's width, like back when Lauda was racing. But like, this isn't one of those like Hunt Lauda situations where it was clearly wider than it was meant to be. We can prove that. This is now, it's like nebulous. It's like, is it under load in violation of the rules, or is it static? Like, how do we measure this? Okay, well, if we measure it statically, then we're within the rules. If this is the violation and the exploit, we're not taking races away from that. We're not stripping people of wins for that. Like, that's crazy. So like that's where I come back at you with the penalty.
Oh, I'm saying they deserve a penalty. I'm not saying they're going to get it, because I do not believe for a second they're going to get that penalty. Now, I think that this needs to actually be investigated this week before the Singapore Grand Prix. While DRS is not as prevalent as it is in Baku, it is still a big thing. And the fact that I saw a video earlier where Leclerc's car with DRS wide open was doing 321 miles per hour, or 321 kilometers per hour. I apologize. Piastri's car, 324 without DRS open. There is something.
The challenge, though,
it.
is that everything takes into account. They're like, how good is the floor? What was the rest of the package? Did they have a high downforce package, which nobody had a high downforce package on at Baku? But these other things could factor in. It'd be better if you had two teams that were closer together, using the same engine supplier, using the same brake ducts, because a lot of those things will have a great deal of effect on the overall package. So if you had a Haas that you could compare to Leclerc's car, now you're talking, right? You have cars with some similar componentry where you could make a better apples-to-apples comparison. But it's really tough across teams. And I think that's, if anybody wants to say, well, what's the difference between, IndyCar and F1? Here it is.
Yep.
It's the total package, right? And that's why I think we as spectators are drawn to F1 to say, I want to see like all out war with cars, right? Like as much money as you can possibly spend. Honestly, we're in a cost cap era, but there's still enormous sums of money that have to be pointed in some direction. So I wish there was more mechanical aspects to F1, but this aerodynamic war zone that we're looking at is certainly impressive. So
no question.
Man, I would love to see a segment of racing like on F1 style tracks where it literally is just open class. Like whatever you can bring that stays on the track, just go. Like the greatest elements of man-derived engineering. Like no engineering.
I'm going to send you a video on this later. Remind me about
F1 time attack
later.
Yeah.
I think we'd kill the drivers, quite frankly, from the G-forces, because you could obviously make cars with more power and bigger tires, but like current time attack is insane enough, and those are door slammers. If you tried to do it with open wheel cars, or what's a good example?
That's what I want. I want time attack, like open. No, just any style of car. I don't care what it is. Just bring the fastest possible human element car you can and try to get it around that track as fast as possible. I want that.
When they unleashed that, what was it? That Porsche LMP car where they were like, all right, so we're going to take all the rules off this thing and we're going to go bomb around and set records at Nürburgring and other racetracks.
Yes.
Like, haha, your track record is now
I want Nürburgring style racing and combined with like Bugatti trying to break 253 miles an hour like style. Like, yes, I want it all. Yes.
What the hell was I going to say? No. Oh my goodness. The time attack thing.
Story of my
basically.
life. Yes.
There is a video around if F1 engineers had no rules. And I'll have to send it to you guys. Like, it was actually pretty cool. And I think we've already seen what happens whenever engineers don't have any rules. Look at the RB17 hypercar. That thing is
well, actually,
a monster.
let's end up saving this actually, because let's go into that. Like, if F1 had no rules, we'll actually use that as a topic for an episode in the winter break. That's coming up. 'Cause- yeah, but next week. So let's go ahead and get close to wrapping. We'll have our little free for all forum with our bold predictions. Singapore is coming up. My bold predictions is youth is going to serve us well. The younger guys that have the athleticism, that have been training very hard, are going to do very well. Like, this is probably the biggest physical challenge in Formula One and possibly in motorsports. In the past, you've had drivers getting out of the car and like literally passing out because they're so dehydrated. It is extremely physically testing for them, for the heat that's on the track. And you just get dehydrated and completely drained. So I think youth is going to serve well this weekend, which means it's going to serve McLaren well. I think the physical aspect too is because of like who was disciplined during their break versus who was kind of like, oh, I'm seasoned and I want to take advantage of this time off, and I'm not working out every day, twice a day with a trainer, getting ready for this physical test. So this is kind of where the fall break works against these guys. But yeah, so I'm going to go, my podium predictions is going to be 1 McLaren, 1 Ferrari, probably Piastri, Leclerc, and then I'm going to actually go, Norris as well. So same prediction as last week. Leclerc and both Pi guys. So who wants to go next on their bold predictions? Fabian, you're muted.
You're still muted.
That you, oh, my.
Yep.
my
There you go.
Oh, I remember that Nico Rosberg said that you can't breathe properly, that you're holding your breath through the turns because of how tightly you're strapped in, because it's turn after turn after turn. It's a different animal than a Vegas. It's a different animal than a Baku, right? And you mentioned obviously the atmospheric issues and so forth. Okay, now we go back to the coolest cats on the track. I think we're going to see Piastri, P1, Sainz, P2, Norris, P3. Norris proved he can whip the whip in Baku. He proved it. He could have whatever he had. Yeah.
Why Sainz over Leclerc?
Because Sainz, the thing about Carlos Sainz to me is that he's very consistently not affected by any hype or drama. You know, Sainz is just a very chill, very relaxed, methodical guy. Look how long he waited out even securing the seat that he decided he wanted to take. Like he doesn't give a shit enough about all the noise to be affected by the noise. There was a lot of noise around that moment. Probably more noise than there was around anything else that went on this year, honestly. It was signs. Didn't faze him one bit. The way he drives, the way the car is performing, the way they looked in Baku, and taking that entire environment and pushing it into Marina Bay, I think Sainz is going to do very well. I really do. I definitely have him on the podium. I'm going to put him P2 behind Piastri. I think Piastri is in his moment. Like, everyone's in Piastri's wake right now, in my estimation. And then but based on what I saw of Norris in Baku, the way he moved that thing around, I think he could definitely be a P3.
I will happily go next.
Do it.
I want to go next because I need to disagree, Fabian. I think Sainz is in a support role voluntarily to Leclerc. Sainz got the ride that he got, whether it was the one he wanted or not. Deal is signed, and he recognizes that Leclerc is closest to getting the points there. So I really think Leclerc is the one who's like going to benefit the most at Ferrari by design. Like I think everybody's on point there. They want to make sure that he has the best chance, and he technically does have a chance. Certainly the best chance of the Ferrari drivers. It'll be interesting to see how they can fare. They had a great setup for Monaco, so I think Leclerc or Sainz, whoever shakes out, because obviously we all thought Norris was going to do good last weekend and just didn't finish Q1. So yeah, I think Ferrari's got a good chance because they had a great Monaco package. I think the late breakers are going to come out here. I think like people like Hamilton and like Ricciardo are going to have better than average results. But I think Max is also going to do better than he had this last race. Tighter track, more nuance to it. I honestly think he's gonna have a better showing. I don't know as we're gonna see Perez come to the top again. That was weird and an outlier to me. I would like to see it. I want to see people do good, especially if they've had a bad run. I do not want to see him wrecking anything. Just putting that out there in the ether. But yeah, I think Papaya again going to be hard to beat, and we'll see what happens with the rest of the field. Just everybody keep your eyes on K-Mag coming through like a cannonball.
That's actually really exciting to know that he's coming back clean.
Oh, I can't fucking wait. I cannot wait. K-Mag's just going to walk out the fucking tunnel to Wrecking Ball. I'm calling it. But
gloves are off. Yeah.
Yep. So, bold predict. This isn't even bold predictions. This is just podium predictions. The man, the myth.
So you can do both.
The smooth operator in first. Because A, he has good history at this course. B, he's coming off a race where he is very pissed off now. I don't think he gives a flying fuck about playing that team game whatsoever. He is under 7 races to go in the season. He is done. Gloves are off. Time to play. Especially with Checo deciding to be Checo or the wind gods or whatever it may be deciding to push him around. Yeah.
The wind gods.
You got to love the wind gods. The wind gods outside of Greg's house. Yeah. That's pretty
That's
accurate.
the F2 whistling turbo noise that we're hearing outside of Greg's house right now.
Does anybody remember a couple of races back whenever Lando's McLaren kept on making that fucking noise? Did we ever find out what the fuck it was?
It was the DRS not opening enough. It was creating a whistling sound.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah,
I would laugh if that's actually what it was. They couldn't open enough, so it just created like a little fucking duck call, basically. Yeah.
Like, oh shit, we got to figure this out, but still take advantage.
Yep. Look, well, he was doing great. Look how much he made up in time on this. Maybe we could do this and make it open. Oh no.
Yeah.
This hurts. This hurts my soul to fucking say it. Chucky Boy in second. Oscar in third. Lando fifth. George either fourth or seventh.
He's going down.
I missed it. Who's winning? Who'd you say was winning?
Sainz.
That's right, because the gloves are off.
He won last year.
You got to keep track of us. I said Sainz in a support role. And these two clowns over here, they're disagreeing.
Yep. All right.
I mean, let me write on my.
Jay, you know what's really weird? Jay and I look like a Democratic Republican Party ticket poll graph because we diverge and we get really close together and we diverge again. It's like, oh my god.
Rich, does that mean we need to be the libertarians? Like, who are we now?
I don't know. I don't want to get into politics.
No, we're not touching politics.
There's enough
There's
politicking everywhere else in this goddamn world.
Jay and I have secret scientific conversations behind y'all's back. I just want y'all to know.
There we go. There's the conspiracy starting. I already know. Yes.
It's a bromance. It's a bromance.
We may act like we don't
So-
like each other on the podcast, but it's all good.
So
Flat
we're
Earth
going to
man.
politically
Oh!
subvert the new world order
What?
with the
We
global
almost
sport.
forgot the tinfoil hat.
I was going to
We
say,
almost
so
forgot it.
our
Fuck.
segue from the McLaren wing, what is your conspiracy of the week?
So, me and Fabian were discussing this earlier. He's obviously
Don't do
on
the
board
head
with
signs.
McLaren cheating their asses off. But no, so we were discussing this earlier. Currently, F1 suffered a major hit in ratings between 22 and 23. Red Bull's dominance did cause this across 3 markets. We figured out 2 of the other markets pretty easily. In 23, the 3 main markets that lost viewership for them by significant margins was Germany, France, and the UK. All right. France, obvious. Alpine sucks. It was their first year of an all-French lineup. They shit the bed royally. They're still shitting the bed, so I'm not surprised if their ratings are dropping even still. So they're off the table. The Germans literally had nobody on the grid other than Nico. Nico was doing nothing. One of their national heroes in Michael Schumacher's son got booted out of Haas that year. He's off. Done. Like, that's going to piss off the Germans. Now, the UK folks, let's be real here. They're going to do something because we all know how the FIA is biased towards British drivers. Like, we can argue this all day long and I don't give a shit. But whenever it comes to penalties, they favor Brits. We've seen it with Alonso. We've seen it with Max. We've seen it George and fucking Fernando in Australia this year. Fernando did not deserve a penalty for that whatsoever, but still caught one. So what's the logical thing to do? Let's let a new British driver come up. You're not going to give it to Hamilton because Hamilton's going to the Italians. Simple as that. He's no longer their favorite child. You can't give it to Georgie boy because if you do that, Hamilton gets the benefits of the car as well. Only one left that's on English, Lando Norris. McLaren's also a British-based company and a British-based factory for the racing. It makes the most sense because we can all agree here. We were talking about Max's €50,000 fine for touching Lewis's wing, but that investigation happened on the wing and it was found to be against the rules and it had to be changed immediately. Max's front wing during 21 had to be changed immediately. 22, it had to be changed immediately. And I want to say Mercedes, correct me if I'm wrong there, Fabian, but I want to say either Mercedes or Ferrari or possibly both in 21 and 22 had to change their front wings as well.
I don't want to interrupt your flow, but that's a very significant point of like the fine and then the wing was then like addressed afterwards. Like that like this is not tinfoil hat. These are legit facts. So keep going. But like that's a significant point of what you're saying.
But the tinfoil hat portion of this is the fact that the FIA is not doing shit because they lost so much of their big business in the UK. Silverstone was not sold out this year for probably the first time outside of the COVID years. We'll take the COVID years completely out. But outside of that,
absolutely.
Silverstone has been sold out for decades.
Yeah.
And for it not to be sold out says something about what is going on with British. Now, granted,
It's very
Silverstone's
true that
promoters,
like Lewis won, and I remember you pushing back on it and us like coming in and you're like, measure the fucking floor.
yep. But honestly, it just does not make sense that they're willing to allow McLaren to bend these rules the way that they are. Test or no test, because Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren, or Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes all passed the wing test for the test that they were doing in 21, 22, and I think 23 with Red Bull. I can't remember. But the FIA said, you have too much bend in your wings, change them. This year, where you can literally see Lando's wing go like this, basically. like the x-axis on it that was like this. The one part of the wing is going down like this. Like you can legitimately see that gap. Why was that not requested to be changed? The DRS flap, I've seen people get disqualified for races for less than that. And that neither McLaren were hit on it for that. They're aiming for another Abu Dhabi shootout. And then all the Lewis Hamilton fans are going to rejoice because Max is finally going to get his in Abu Dhabi.
I don't think there needs to be so much tinfoil on my hat to like deny this. I think that it's pretty well bolstered. In fact, I've also talked about how like it just seems like the FIA likes to scheme shit. It's not the first thing. Like it is certainly not the first time they've been selective with their punishments and penalties. And the way that it just seems to be orchestrated for these ultimate dramatic moments to draw in more fans and more people, while at the same time, like royally pissing off diehard fans and like people who look at this at an analytical level and are like, how the fuck are you doing that? Like, that's not the rule. Like, enforce the rule consistently the whole time. Like, and it draws even me who like rejects conspiracy, like almost all conspiracies at like a frontal level. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like it's bullshit. It does make me question, like, what the fuck are these people doing? Like, I don't put it past them anymore. I really don't. After 2021, there was all the drama in the 80s and 90s, and you know we dug into it a little bit in our history episodes, but yeah, no, I don't put it past him for a second to try and orchestrate whatever situation is going to create the most viewership. And so, like, that's where, like, I don't wear a tinfoil hat. Like, I'm with you on this. I wouldn't put it past him to try and repeat a 2021 style, like, drivers' championship controversy with Lando, Oscar, and Max. I think especially with a British driver, like you're creating two villains here that aren't British, and one's his teammate. And so there's that controversy. And like we said, like nothing sells like controversy and sex. And there's no shortage of controversy within Formula One. So like let's end that as kind of our free for all, like 10-minute conclusion topic. What do you guys got on this? Like, do you think that there's conspiratorial elements within Formula One that exist to try and create scenarios that generate more views? Or is this just the honest sport playing out the way that it is, and maybe we're reading too deep into the facts? I'll let either Greg or Fabian jump in. I'm pointing down.
Go ahead, Greg. Take it.
Thoughts out there.
Got it. You're good.
I am now not muted. All right, so putting both sides of the coin out there, playing a little devil's advocate for both aspects of this. If they are doing this, they obviously need to do it as quietly as possible, right? And they should be trying to do it in ways that we don't notice necessarily. So they have to have plausible deniability for everything that they do. We can't really say that that's happening because some of the points that Jay brought up are pretty valid. I would say some of the other ones are difficult to act on, right? So like some of these rules enforcements are like, how are they supposed to, even though they can see a wing bending, how are they supposed to measure the improvement? Like it's tough. They need to physically measure the thing, right? Whether it's with a sensor or a freaking ruler. So those are tough to do, but like there is a difference obviously in how they were enforced. So yeah, I would also probably say that if there are no conspiracy theories, nobody's going to doubt the fact that everything in F1 has an enormous sum of money behind it, which means the policies, the people that are politicking behind the scenes, people that are advocating for certain things to go certain ways. There's so much pressure from so many different places. For sure, everything in F1 is being argued about by somebody, right? So whether that's a conspiracy or things have just moved in waves, like you get enough people pushing in a certain direction and now all of a sudden it's, yeah, well, flexi wings are okay in its one aspect. And McLaren just happens to be there at the time when it's okay and they're not going to do anything about it. I wouldn't doubt that at all, right? But I'm like Rich, conspiracy theories. I'm like, man, I don't really buy into that too much. But then you get somebody like Michael Masi who's like, yeah, we're going to just have a car race. Yeah, no shit, Mike. We all know what we're here for, right? But there was a rule book and you didn't follow it. And now you've got this, runaway success of a team. Maybe Michael Masi brought this upon us. Who knows? Like the butterfly effect can be a thing, and other times it's not. So I don't know. Fabian, what do you got on this?
No, wait. Let me interject because like that
No,
logic, that reasoning, in the way that it came back was like, oh yeah, it's a car race. No shit, motherfucker. We've spent billions of dollars to get here. I know that this is a car race, you fucking idiot. I'm asking you to enforce the rules consistently.
Right.
This was bullshit.
Yeah.
It's in violation. It's inconsistent. It is not consistent with your policy. And you're publicly stating this to the fucking world at this point. This is a global sport. Oh, it's a car race. That's your explanation? Motherfucker, you better give me more. You had better fucking give me more when the world championship is on the line. Fuck that. Like that was not acceptable. Like I was with Total Wolf on this. Like my hair was on fire. Like I'm losing my fucking mind. I'm throwing headphones and like I'm gonna go punch this motherfucker. Like, are you joking? Oh, it's a car race? Okay. Well, let me show you what a punch in the face is, idiot. Because there's rules to this car race.
Yeah, it was pretty pathetic. But let me go back to the original question. The original question was, do you think that there are conspiracy things going on within the sport for the benefit of producing drama, etc.? I'm going to answer in this way. First of all, I will say this. Speaking back, and I'm not going to talk about Abu Dhabi. Forget Abu Dhabi. Let me say this. Let me look into the camera and say these words. When you have a driver's obligation in the regulations to notify the medical stewards and the racing stewards of any change in your physical condition so that your own safety and the safety of others can be preserved, and you deliberately conspire not to do so, to the extent that you finish racing a race that you started feeling okay and that you admittedly said you would actually turn your car off and walk away from, that's a conspiracy theory. Not a theory. That's conspiring against the rules and regulations. Max absolutely told the Red Bulletin that he couldn't see at the Circuit of the Americas at COTA in 2021. He said it. And within 24 to 48 hours, they took it off the website and it hasn't been discussed since. You know why? Because the driver's obligation regulation says that you must notify the medical director on site. The medical director would have notified Horner to tell Max to park the car.
Moments where he said the quiet part out loud.
He would have told Max to park that car.
Shit.
He would have told Max to park that car. And the moment that happened, that would have been what you would consider to be a medically induced DNF. And that would have been 25 points that Max wouldn't have earned, and Abu Dhabi wouldn't have mattered. That's the biggest.
So here's a conspiracy. Like, here's my conspiratorial thinking. Even if he said it, even if Horner knew, it would have been a private conversation between the two of them of like, can you finish the race? Can you score the points?
Flat out said to the Red Bulletin writer, yeah, we hid that from everyone. We didn't reveal that at the time. That is a clear violation of the regulations. Like
he didn't understand that what he was admitting to was a completely clear violation of the rules.
It's so
he
clear.
was talking about what happened to him. Yep.
This is not flexi wing. This is not inertia valve. This is, you have an obligation to notify the stewards immediately on site of any change in your medical status of any kind that is detrimental to your ability to drive the car. And the man said, my vision was so blurred that I considered turning the car off and stop racing.
Admitted rule violation. Jay, what do you have on this?
So we can go so many fucking different ways with this one. This one's fun.
Let's do it.
So for starters,
pick one.
We will go the medical route. We'll go there. Now, if, and this is a big if, the FIA actually were staging Abu Dhabi to be the way that it was. Do you think for 3 seconds that they didn't know what was going on with Max? That they didn't already have the doctor saying that this is going on? Wink, wink. He will not come out of this race unless if he is passing out at that wheel. That is the only way he comes out of this race.
I don't think it's that dramatic,
Also,
but I think as long as I think it's on him to say and self-identify of like, hey, these are my limitations. This is what's going on with me. And he's admittedly saying, I didn't do that. I didn't say like, hey, I can't see. I'll say it after the fact, but I didn't say it to anybody at the time. If he had said that, then this is where it gets traction and wheels. If he had notified anybody outside of himself that, hey man, I can't see well right now. My vision's blurred. I can't read the signs and like rattle off like who's behind me 20 seconds in 12 places the way he typically does. Okay, well then this is where it needs to be penalized.
Guys, he was very specific. He said tracks that have
Yeah.
undulations and lots
He
of
should have reported
advertising signage cause
if
him
he
the
had
greatest
told-
problem at the time, right?
So here's the crux. If he had told anybody else before this, and there's evidence of that, this is where they could lose. Because like then it's like, hey, no, keep driving. Even though it's unsafe, even though you're admitting physical faults. But he himself is self-acknowledged a violation of the rules. He
Right.
should have reported this like lack
No
of
question.
performance because
No
it's
question.
extremely dangerous. If your vision is blurring, come on. I don't know how fast you guys have driven. My top is 183 on a bike, 177 in a car. Anything above 120 and it is insane. It's why I try to not criticize as heavily like what happened between Checo and Sainz this weekend, because like we're well above triple digits. There's airflow. There's things that like I'm not in that seat. I can't accurately and fairly say like, oh, this is your fault and assign blame for that. I want to look at external factors and things that don't seem readily apparent to the naked eye and general follower, is because like airflow at that level of speed determines everything. And the queuing factor for me was like, what happened? Like that was, if that's your reaction of like, what happened? It was something happened that was completely and wildly unexpected. Not to derail and drop back, but it's just something that, like when you get up into these above triple digit speeds, weird and strange things happen, and we can't fairly criticize. But Jay, let's keep going. Come on. Where's the big conspiracy?
Oh, I'm trying to find something right now as we speak, because something just clicked. Like every athlete has to go through medical checkups
Yes.
prior
they
to an
do.
event.
And you
Sure.
have to state your like physical and mental being.
Correct, but
the time.
the things that he was stating would have been tested
It
against.
doesn't.
Whenever you have
they wouldn't have
little
gone.
Tested
let
or
me talk,
self-admitted.
I let you talk.
We have to look into the process.
Go ahead,
We have
Bubba.
to,
Go.
yeah.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing that you have to look into the process and everything like that. What I'm
Right.
saying here is that Max was showing every sign. If what he is saying is accurate, those are all signs of a concussion. There's very clear test for a concussion. Very clear test. Especially after a fucking accident like that, he definitely would have been tested for a concussion at very minimum. And
So
if
that
they
expands
let him
the scope
race,
of this conspiracy.
right. And that's why I said the doctor was probably told by the FIA, if we're all right about the Abu Dhabi shootout, the FIA told the doctor, wink, wink, there's nothing wrong. That is where the conspiracy theory lies.
When you go back and actually read the quote from Max about this, it implicates him knowingly doing it. It implicates the team, Horner, the Wall, all of them. It's a really look, I've been trying to get to the bottom of this for months because it's such a serious thing. It's like, yes, the FIA has been absolutely willy-nilly on how they apply rules and regulations. That's something that needs to be fixed. There's no excuse for that. There really isn't. There's just no excuse for them fining Max $50,000 for touching Lewis's car or whoever's car it was in 2021 and fining somebody else only $5,000 for doing the same thing. That makes no sense, right? It doesn't matter that it's Max and he makes 50 million and the other guy makes 15. I don't want to hear that shit.
No,
the rules are the rules, and the regulations are the regulations.
And that's where the conspiracies generate from, is this inapplication of rules and penalties.
And only thing you can point back to, this is going right back to the original question, because the question on the table was about whether or not the FIA is involved. It's hard to give them a pass in all this when all this stuff is swirling around it. So would I outwardly accuse them of being corrupt? Outwardly? No. Would I outwardly consider very seriously that they are accessorial to corruption in the sport? I would consider that because of the things like Massey and the ridiculous explanation for the things that he did, and so many other things from that tenure on forward to this tenure, even because you've got the new folks saying things like, oh, we're going to implement some new rules around what you say on the radio, because you're offending us personally. That doesn't have integrity. I mean, it's not, I guess the real word that I'm looking for in all of this, because corruption is born out of a lack of integrity. So I'm looking for that, right? There's just some of the things that are going on with the teams and the principals and the drivers in concert with the FIA, just reek of a lack of integrity. They do.
So I'm going to compare this the easiest way possible. Patrice Bergeron literally played in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Oh,
now,
yes.
mind you,
okay,
this guy should not have been anywhere near the ice. Rich is laughing because he knows exactly where I'm fucking going. They are supposed to declare anything wrong with them whatsoever. Patrice Bergeron played with 6 cracked ribs. 4 cracked, 2 broken. To the point where this dude takes a check wrong, he's puncturing a lung on the ice. They could not get him off of the ice. There was another guy that played for the Dallas Stars, I believe, had a heart attack on the bench, got shocked back to life, and said, "Oh, is it my turn?" Like, he was ready to go out on the ice. These people that are truly about the sport are not going to utter a fucking word about it.
I agree.
And this is one thing that me and you have always agreed on. Max is that type.
Oh, look, in the piece that I wrote about this before I was with you guys, right? In the first piece, there's 2 parts. I end that piece with the heart of a lion, the heart of a champion. Like, I touch upon that very heavily, saying, after all the facts and the rules and the regulations are looked at, and you cast that to the side for a moment and just look at the heart of the athlete and what they're trying to accomplish, it's pretty monumental that he could fight through that at the Circuit of the Americas, all the races prior to the moment that even manifested. We don't know even how many other times it was there, but not as bad. We know for a fact from his mouth that at COTA it was bad. But the dude put up championship numbers in spite of that. I will never, ever downgrade that. I just won't. And I didn't even when I started the conversation. But juxtaposing the COTA dilemma against the Abu Dhabi mess, Abu Dhabi wouldn't have not been a factor at all. It would have been over. In fact, if I didn't do the crunch the numbers I need to do it, if you take COTA out as a medical DNF, Hamilton would have been crowned an 8th-time world champion sooner. I think. I haven't done it, but I'll do it just to point it out. It wouldn't have come down to Abu Dhabi. It would have been probably a race or 2 before that. And that's my point with the whole thing. It's like, it's really frustrating when you see a body the size and scope of the FIA that have spent so many man hours and so much time and so much money putting together a dossier of regulations that they seem to just overlook at a moment's notice for whatever reason at certain times. And it's very frustrating as a fan because you call it Formula One because it's the penultimate racing sport of all time. I mean, fan base, social media fan base, viewership, nothing eclipses this. And the formula is the regs, the formula is the rules. But then you're monkeying around with the formula like you're not really messing with nitroglycerin and combustible things. You're playing with people's careers, their lives, their legacy. Not cool.
I fully concur with you. We touched on some very important things. One of those was just the human element of the race car driver and the mindset of I will compete no matter what. Piastri cracked some ribs and stayed in the car. We talked.
should have been out.
Should have been. We talked about Alonso, or excuse me, not Alonso, but Stroll, best driving of his life with 2 jacked up wrists. Danny Rick coming back, the way that it draws the mental focus in when you're injured, the pain almost distracts you from like what's happening and gives you that flow state. It's something.
That's it.
Something worth mentioning, right? But you're never just like a UFC fighter that gets knocked out on the ground and the ref has to like lay down on top of him because as soon as he wakes up, he's swinging. He's not under the mindset or the impression that the fight's over. I'm still fighting.
Yes.
It is.
That's where he left off in his mind.
And it is in the mentality of every F1 driver.
Yeah.
My only relational comparison is like I've woken up at times where like I was on a different sleep schedule and it was like, oh, I thought I was somewhere different than what I was. Or waking up in the middle of the night, answering a phone call and spewing out like the same script that I would when I was overseas and woken up in the middle of the night. Your brain is just conditioned to be that way. It really is. And so like I don't fault Max or any driver from trying to shy away from the competition. I understand why they would do that. Yeah. We're going to wrap. We're going to come back with our favorite topics, but next week is going to be the biggest physical test, I think, and also mental endurance test for all of the drivers on the grid. And so I'm very excited to see what happens. This has been Formula One Fans of America, episode 7. Thank you all for listening.
7.